Welcome to But Enough About Me, a podcast about other people. My name is Tyler Andrews. I'm a Nashville-based photographer, husband, and father. I'm trying to collect the stories of everyone around me, whether we're best friends or total strangers. I want to know what made you the person you are today. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Guys, it's been 2 weeks, and it's been an eventful 2 weeks. I am exhausted. Man, I don't know when I'm going to get a break here, but we're coming up on a year of doing this, just a few episodes from now. And in all likelihood, I'm probably going to take a couple weeks off when that happens. So brace yourself. You're going to have to do without some stories for a little bit. But that's not today. Today, we have another story. This one, this is so much fun for me. I wanted to hear this guy's stories ages ago, but I never really had an excuse to just call him up and say, hey, come tell me your story. He was somebody I met, gosh, it seems like another lifetime ago, when I was working for Dave Ramsey years and years and years ago, and I was teaching FPU at the Dave Ramsey Show offices. He and his, I think then, fiance came in, and we went through the class and all that. And I immediately liked him because he had a Punisher tattoo on his leg, and this is back long before Netflix had made everybody aware of who the Punisher was. So seeing something like that, I knew this guy was a comic book fan. And we instantly clicked and bonded over that. And anyway, long story short, thanks to the magic of social media, never really lost touch with him, was always aware of where he was and what he was doing. And anyway, all that is to say, it's going to be a good story. My guest is a father and a husband. His wife is a photographer and very, very talented. He is an educator and entertainer. But the way he does that is by being strong. My guest today is a strong man and a performing strong man. He teaches other people how to perform feats of strength, and he's written a book and all kinds of fun stuff. He will tell you all about all of it, so I don't have to go into too much of it. I will say this, though. If you would like to see his book or get it for free, you just pay shipping. All you have to do is go to superhumanyobook.com, superhumanyobook.com, and you can get a hold of his book for free. Just pay shipping. You'll hear that this interview, by our standards, is relatively short, and but not. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's good. He just got right to the point. He knew exactly where to go and how to tell his story because he's done it dozens and dozens and dozens of times. Also, toward the end, you'll hear we get a little philosophical. He tells me a lot about what he believes and how he thinks. It's really fun. I think you guys are going to find this really, really interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, the Iron Tamer, Dave Whitley. She thought it was hilarious. So, anyway, that's a side. Dave, I am so thankful that you are here. It's been a minute since we saw each other, so thank you. I just want to know your story.
Well, thanks for having me.
Of course. Tell me about yourself. When were you born?
I was born 1969. I recently celebrated my 50th birthday.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I didn't know that.
Yep, I am 50. And I still feel like I'm 23.
Yeah.
I still think like I act like I'm 23, so there's that. Born in Nashville, live in Middle Tennessee, and have lived in Nashville for a long time. So I'm a unicorn. I was born here.
A native.
Strange. Yeah. Parents moved around a little bit when I was a kid, moved to Georgia. That's where both of them are from. So about the second grade, we moved back to Tennessee. I lived in Mount Juliet for a few years, and then around 81, we moved to Giles County, which is
out of ways.
Yeah, it's almost in Alabama, and so I grew up in the woods there. That's where I start thinking about who, like how I really became who I am was around that period, because the rest of it was just typical kid stuff.
Okay, wait. So, how old were you in? You said 81, so that would have been 12.
I think I was 11 when we
11 or
moved,
12. Yeah. Okay, all right. Very cool.
But before that, formative years in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, I was a fairly overweight kid, and I had a pronounced and significant stutter.
Really?
And so when I would get called on for class from the teacher,
yeah,
I would almost invariably start stuttering, get made fun of, get picked on. They had horrible names for me, all that kind of stuff. And as a result of that, And also on top of that, being a naturally extroverted personality,
Sure.
that set me up for disruptive behavior, to
Yeah.
put it a certain way.
Yeah.
So I figured out a few things pretty early. I figured out that if I could come up with ways to draw attention to myself before the stutter happened, then I could control the attention.
Oh, okay. Oh,
And
wow.
it's only been as an adult looking back on that I realized that's what I was doing.
Sure.
It was my way of taking control of that
Yeah, it's a
situation.
coping mechanism.
Yeah, sure. And part of that part of that involved me sort of retreating into the world of science fiction and fantasy and comic books, which we were talking about before we went on air.
Yep.
And I was really fascinated with superhuman powers, specifically superhuman strength, and truly, truly mesmerized by the character of the Hulk because I identified so strongly with him. He was, generally speaking, this sort of oppressed guy, and then when he got angry, he turned into this invincible thing, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to be that so that I wouldn't get messed with. And along the way, learned compassion to go along with that, like we were talking about earlier. But really identified with that, and vividly remember being a kid and seeing Lou Ferrigno come on television as the Hulk. And something in my mind switched when I saw that, because it went from being this fantasy cartoon comic book thing to, that's a real guy. That's not a costume. I mean, he was wearing makeup and a prosthetics on his face and stuff, but that was his real body.
Yeah.
And so that made me understand that it was possible to be big and strong like the Hulk. So it went from being impossible to being possible. And actually I'm going to go ahead and pitch.
Do it.
Actually tell a great part of this story in my book, Superhuman You, which is available at superhumanyobook.com for free. All you have to do is pay for shipping.
Cool.
So go check that out. I'll say that again several times before this is over with.
I can plug it before and after, too.
Well, and you can edit it out if I say it too much. So
That's
there's
true.
that. So I saw Ferrigno on TV, and my habit as a kid was on Sundays, we used to get the Sunday paper, which at the time seemed like this massive, massive thing, right?
Yeah.
And now it's probably, smaller like that. But we would get that, and I would immediately pull the comics out, spread them out on the kitchen table, all of them, just spread everything out and go through them one at a time. And when I got done with an entire section of a paper, I would fold it up or wad it up and throw it away, and I would do the comics that way every Sunday. That was my thing. And so after I saw Ferrigno on television as the Hulk, my mom comes in on Sunday morning. I've got paper spread out all over the place, but this time instead of the comics, it's the classifieds. And she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm looking for gamma radiation."
Oh, that's fantastic.
Because I'm what, 8 years old? I don't know any different. I just assume that that's what's going on, because the line between the fiction of television and reality and all of that, I'm still putting those things together. My synapses in my brain are still connecting what's 3D reality and what's imagination.
Well, and if you can see it on TV, then to some extent it must be real.
Sure.
I mean, he literally does have that physique.
Yeah.
And for all you know, that's how he got it.
Right. Yeah. And of course, in a pre-Google era, there was no gamma radiation to be found, no radioactive spiders, no meteors falling out of the sky into woods to go touch or anything like that. So I just kind of let it go after that. And then I don't remember how much longer it was after that, but PBS was showing the movie Pumping Iron.
Yeah. They showed that on PBS?
Yeah, in the 70s. But that entire movie was set around Arnold Schwarzenegger's 1975 Mr. Olympia victory, and it was a documentary about these bodybuilders. And so Arnold was in it, Franco Columbo, who was Arnold's training partner.
Lou's in there.
Yeah, and Louis. So when I found out that Lou Ferrigno was in this movie playing himself, I was just mesmerized. And so here's all these giant, massive comic book superhero dudes.
Yeah.
Looking dudes that are lifting weights. So I'm like, oh, so that's how they do it. So I got a set of weights for Christmas that year, and that set me on the path of strengthdom. And here we are 40 years later, and I'm a professional performing strongman and speaker. So
that's awesome. Okay, so let me go back a little bit then. Mm-hmm. Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have a sister that I am in communication with, and we get along, and I have a brother that is estranged.
Where are you in the family lineup?
I am the youngest.
Okay, all right. How much older are they than you?
They are a couple of years apart, and she's 9 years older than me, and I was unplanned.
I was going to say, so you were a surprise.
I was unplanned, yes.
Okay. Tell me about the family. I mean, being the baby, and by a large margin being the baby.
About 7 years or so, yeah.
Yeah, tell me the family dynamic going on in there. What was
Um,
that like?
by the time I got old enough to be doing the stuff that we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
I think my sister was pretty close to moving out,
Mm-hmm.
and my brother moved out when he was 18. So when we moved from Mount Juliet to Giles County,
Mm-hmm.
from that point forward, I was the only child at home.
Okay, all right. So for a large portion of your life, it was kind of an only child
Yeah, through
raised.
the elementary school, junior high, and high school, all of those years, I was the only child in the house. We would see my sister periodically and my brother a little less,
Yeah,
but yeah.
cool. Okay. You were talking about in school and being called on and those sorts of things. What specifically would you do to get attention before you started stuttering?
Just about anything I could think of. I would wad up paper and throw at people. I would
Really?
take people's books out of their desks and hide them. I would just do outbursts of yelling or telling funny jokes or reciting lines from like MASH or Three's Company or
Yep.
something, whatever, any of that kind of stuff. I did have one teacher, and again, this was in a far less sensitive period of time than we're in right now.
Right.
This guy would have deservedly gotten fired for doing this. But he was a teacher, and I guess it was probably around 1980. So I was probably in the sixth grade, and my mom had bought a bunch of shirts for me that had the Olympic emblem on them,
Mm-hmm. The rings.
and it had various sports on them. So I had one that said swimming, and I had one, whatever. One of it said weightlifting. That was the thing, because this was right around the time that I first
Figured.
got involved in that. And I didn't
Yeah.
know anything about Olympic weightlifting. I didn't know it was different than bodybuilding or powerlifting or strongman or anything like that. But I wore it to school one day, and we were talking about the Olympics in class, because I guess it was probably like ancient history, Greek, something like that, and the
Mm-hmm.
Olympics and all that. And one of the other kids pointed out that I was wearing a shirt that said weightlifting on it. And the teacher, his name was Mr. Bruce, said, yeah, every time he stands up out of his chair, he lifts a ton. This is the teacher saying this to little 10-year-old me, right?
Wow.
And so little 10-year-old me had a Hulk out and bounced a social studies book off this dude's head.
That seems appropriate,
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah. And it
Oh
was.
my
And I stand
gosh.
by that decision to this day. You know?
Oh man. People are awful.
Well, that's just the state of mind he was in,
Yeah.
And
Was he in great shape?
I don't remember. He seemed just like a regular dude to me, So I don't know. I looking back on it now, I realize that that's just where he was,
Yeah.
and that was the culture that we were in. He was a probably 40-something-year-old white dude in the 70s.
Yeah.
So, it was fine to do that.
Man, that's rough.
But I stand by my decision.
Yeah. Reasonably so.
So then when I was a teenager, started playing music.
What'd you play?
I played guitar, and played. That was what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be. I wanted to be Ted Nugent and Eddie Van Halen in the 80s. Went to college, played in rock bands. Dropped out of college to go on the road with a cover band, and then woke up in Alaska in my early 20s in December, going, you know what? This sucks.
Wait a minute. That's a bit of a jump. So wait, so you're going to college for
Music.
music, okay? And you dropped out in what year?
92.
No, I'm sorry. In your progression, freshman, sophomore, junior.
I guess I was probably a sophomore. I between high school and going to college, I took some time off and worked a few jobs and actually went to a music school in Atlanta.
Okay.
And thought that if I could go to a college type situation around Nashville, so I went to Murfreesboro because that was the best tuition deal that we could get, and they had the good music and recording programs there.
Yep.
I went there, not really with the intention of getting a degree, but with the intention of making connections so that I could start playing music and getting paid to do it.
Sure. Okay. So you did what you came to do, set out to do.
Yeah. Well, the connections that I made where I got paid had nothing to do with college, but I learned how playing college bands, how to channel that extrovertedness on stage to be entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so I woke up in Alaska playing in a cover band doing country songs
So, so
in December. You ever been to Alaska?
no, I've not. I've seen pictures.
It's cold in
They're
December.
very white. Why, why did your cover band think that going to Alaska in December was the right plan?
I was just hired to play the guitar.
So you didn't make decisions.
I didn't make any of those decisions. And actually, I got the gig because I had either answered a classified ad in like a music paper, or found like a thing on a bulletin board at a music store or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I got in contact with these people, and their regular guy had quit. And they had booked this 6-week stint at a bar in Alaska, playing 6 nights a week, 5 sets a night.
5 sets a night?
5 sets a night, yeah, like from 9 to 2. Or from 8 to 2, something like that. 45-minute sets. And it was all top 40 country stuff. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll go. Because I think they paid like $250 a week or something, which was huge money for me at that point in my life. Yeah. And I got up there and I'm like, this really sucks. I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. There's no Van Halen in this. There's no smoke machine. There's just a bunch of completely wasted pipeline workers.
Exactly.
Who want to hear Charlie Daniels.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So when I got done with that gig, I sort of said, I don't want to do this anymore. Did a little bit of independent studio stuff, but in Nashville, you have to be a monster. There's no middle ground. You are one of the guys who gets paid triple union scale, or you pass a hat.
Right.
There's no in between on that, or at least that's the way it was, 25 years ago when I was doing
And
this.
it's all in who you know.
Yeah, and I didn't know anybody.
Right.
And people that I did know, they didn't know anybody.
Right.
So wound up just kind of floundering around and doing some regular job stuff there for a while. Worked at a lockdown treatment facility for juvenile sex offenders.
Oh my.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good time.
No, not so much. Not so much. And I have successfully freed myself from most of the trauma I experienced while I was there.
Okay, lockdown juvenile facility for sex offenders. Mm-hmm. So underage kids who have
committed
sexual crimes. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. However bad you think it is, it's actually worse.
And they put them all together in one big pile.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they separated them by age, and the ones who were really young, like the 8 and 9-year-olds, they were on a different end of the facility.
8 and 9?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was as horrible as you think it is. The good thing about it, though, is that's where I met my wife. She was working there as a frontline staff, the same as me, and then she actually wound up with getting her master's in social work and becoming a therapist at that job before she quit to become a photographer, because it's just you can only be in that for so long before it just wears on every aspect of your soul.
No kidding. That's
yeah.
Wow.
So I quit that job right after I graduated from massage therapy school.
Okay.
Somewhere in the midst of doing that job, I played around as a pro wrestler. We were talking about earlier.
Okay, so tell me about that. Having never been a pro wrestler, tell me about being a pro wrestler.
Being a pro wrestler is fun. If you've ever seen that movie that Mickey Rourke did called The Wrestler, that is as accurate a representation of what life is like for those guys on that level.
Yeah.
Because what you see in that movie is the guys who are up and coming, who want to be the next Dwayne Johnson or the next Stone Cold or the next John Cena. And then you've also got the guys who used to be on top of the game who don't have any other thing to do.
Right.
So they're not like a guy like obviously like The Rock. He's a huge movie star now, but someone who's less known than that, like say Diamond Dallas Page.
Yep.
Page realized that I can't keep doing this, so he ventured into other areas, and he has his whole DDP yoga thing now, and so he's doing well with that. But most of those guys, it's a lot like being equal parts rock band musician guy and professional athlete.
Yeah.
Except there's no off season.
And there's no residuals. Yeah.
Unless you get, signed by, Vince McMahon or something, then you get a percentage of merchandise and and that kind of stuff. So yeah, but they own your image.
Right. Yeah. Man. Oh,
So
man.
I did it on the level of like every now and then on Saturday morning, you could watch the local wrestling from the Nashville Fairgrounds and see me getting my ass kicked. Every now and then. I was what we called a jobber. Pin me and pay me, and I'll go home, you know. So so that was fun. Managed to break a bone in my hand at a show.
Is that the bump?
Yeah.
Oh,
I've got a plate and
whoa.
5 screws in there. And that was from body slamming a guy into a coffin, and I hit my hand on the coffin. I did a vampire gimmick for a while. And I broke that hand, and so I'm in vampire makeup.
Right.
And the finish was me drinking fake blood out of a goblet, and it was all over my face and running down my chin and stuff. And then we drug the coffin out and put it in the back of a pickup truck, and I drove away, and nobody saw either one of us for 6 months. Because he took some time off,
Right.
the guy that I was working, who was actually the guy that taught me.
Yeah.
His name was Jeff the Crippler Daniels. And
and you had a broken hand.
I had a broken hand, so we drove down the road. I let him out of the coffin. I'm like, I need to go to the doctor now because
Yeah.
I could feel it moving around. It didn't hurt, but I could feel the bones kind of grinding against each other. So I walk into the emergency room at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night,
Covered in blood.
pale, covered in blood from the mouth down. And I come walking in, and the emergency room is a place on Saturday night where a lot of people seem to hang out. And
Yeah.
It's like, you know how there can be that kind of ambient conversation noise.
Sure.
I walked in the door, the entire room got silent.
Well, yeah.
And because I'm sure I looked like I had, slit my throat or something. I'm like,
Yeah.
It's my hand. This is all fake. I just need to get this hand looked at. I had a surgery, and everything's fine now. Got out of the wrestling business not too long after that.
Oh my gosh.
And so in about 2001, 2002, I had started, somewhere in there I was playing martial arts quite a bit too, some Chinese Kung Fu. There's a lot to this story that we're trying to compress into a short period of time.
Tell me all the details. What do you mean playing martial arts?
It was too much fun to call it work.
Okay.
But it was a fairly serious study of a relatively obscure, lesser known style of Kung Fu called
Okay.
Southern Prey and Mantis Kung Fu.
Okay.
That was my main thing that I did martial art wise. And that was fun, and I had a great time with it, and learned a lot about meditation and breathing along with that. So that still carries over into what I do now very much. So yeah, that was for several years there that I was doing that.
How do you make money in martial arts? Were you teaching? Is that what you...
No, this is straight hobby stuff.
Oh, okay.
I was,
all right.
Yeah, this was
Still
just,
doing massage therapy and...
No, this was when I was working at the sex offender facility.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so all of that kind of coincided there. And then I went into massage therapy school and found that was a good outlet for me because I had a fairly good understanding of anatomy before I went into that through all the physical training stuff that I'd done, lifting and all
Yeah.
that. Because I'm still doing strength stuff this whole
So
time.
you did that the whole time?
Yeah, off and on.
Didn't let up?
More often on other times, like when I was on the road and stuff. But in about 2001, 2002, I ran across kettlebells.
Okay.
This
Oh,
is when-
wow.
This is when that stuff was first hitting
Yeah, that's...
in the States. Yeah.
Yeah, that was brand new.
Yeah, it was brand new. And I had a massage therapy client who knew that I lifted weights and was into strength stuff, who loaned me. Well, he asked me if I knew about him. I mean, I've seen photos and stuff because this is in the early days of the internet too, when you go find these pictures of these old timers and stuff, right?
Yep.
I said I knew a little bit about it, but not much. So he loaned me his 16 kilo, 35 pound kettlebell and his VHS tape of how to use it.
What to do with it?
From this guy named Pavel, right? And so I went home, watched it, played with it, and it hit me so hard in such a way that I had never experienced that I'm like, I either need to completely ignore this and pretend it never happened,
Not tell anyone.
or I'm going to go all in.
Yeah.
And I wound up going all in. And in 2003, became a kettlebell instructor through an organization called the RKC, which was for Russian Kettlebell Certified or Russian Kettlebell Challenge, and was involved with that. And then there was some things that happened between this Russian guy and that company, and they split, and they started an organization called Strong First, and I went with that for a little while. So between 2003 and 2016, that was the biggest thing that I did was, or like the number one thing.
Training wise.
Yeah, training wise. And I got to travel all over the country and around the world teaching at certifications. I met a guy named Bud Jeffries, who's a phenomenal strongman.
Okay.
And at the time, this is in the pre-podcast era. It's
Yeah.
about 2006 or so. I would interview people on the phone, edit the recordings, burn CDs, and I had a website that I would mail those CDs out to people physically.
That's awesome.
Yeah, except it was.
I mean, that's really labor intensive.
It was very labor intensive. You know how much effort goes into a podcast.
Yeah.
Now put that into burning it to a CD and all the possible things that can snacks you can run into with that, and then putting it in an envelope and taking it to the mailbox.
Yeah. I'd lose it somewhere along there.
Yeah, well, I did. But through interviewing Bud, I asked him, do you have other people that you know that would be good guests for the show? Because the website was called Strength Secrets Revealed, and I would interview very strong people into whatever particular niche they were in. He said, yeah, you need to talk to Dennis Rogers. So he made connections between me and Dennis Rogers, who is the most well-known, most seen by human eyes strongman in history, because he's been on pretty much every TV show that you can think of in the past 30 years or so. I mean, he's got footage of him and Oprah and Jimmy Kimmel and Tom Green. Like Tom Green actually tried to get him to break his arm on screen because Tom Green knew his show was going to get canceled.
Oh my gosh.
Dennis didn't do it. So I set up the meeting, got in touch with Dennis, and he sent me some DVDs of both himself on stage doing his performance stuff, but also some instructional stuff. And the first thing that he did that I watched was he and his brother were in a car, and it was like a hot rod, right? And his brother's a mechanic hot rod guy, and they were shooting all this, and it was essentially Jackass with feats of strength, right? So they pull the car over, and Dennis's brother's like, something doesn't sound right. I'm going to go look under the hood. So he goes and he pops the hood and he says, hey, Dennis, look in the toolbox and bring me that adjustable wrench. So Dennis goes to the trunk, pops it open, pulls out this adjustable wrench, looks at it, looks at the camera, wraps it up and bends it into this U shape, and then takes it to his brother. And his brother's like, what is this? I can't use this. You know, that kind of.
Yeah.
But I'm like, this guy just bent a wrench. And Dennis is he's 5'8", maybe 165 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
And he just... this was a few years ago. Now he's 63. He just turned 63. He just looks like some dude, somebody's grandpa.
Sure.
Now, so that was his thing. Like part of his persona was he didn't look like he should be a strongman.
Right.
He was a world champion arm wrestler before he was a strongman, and he competed at the 123-pound class. Right. And so he's a phenomenally strong guy in a very small package. So anyway, he started teaching me feats of strength because, like, he sent these videos, like, if there's anything you want to learn, anything that I can help you with, let me know. Wound up going to a workshop that he did called Old Time Strongman University. Learned a bunch of stuff, learned how to drive an L without a hammer, ripping decks of cards, ripping phone books back when those were still something that were easy to find. I ripped so many phone books. I like to think I'm responsible for there not being any more of them right now.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah.
And again, I talk about the high points of this in my book, Superhuman You, available for free at superhumanubook.com. You just pay shipping.
Very good. So going back a little bit, when you were training prior to the strongman training, did you have a specific thing that you wanted to do? Were you trying to be a bodybuilder? Were you just going for general fitness strength?
It was general fitness strength.
Because Lou Ferrigno is a very specific bodybuilder thing.
Definitely, yeah. I realized very early on in my lifting days that I was not cut out to be a bodybuilder for a number of reasons. One, my bone structure is all wrong. I have very big bones, and the guys who do well at bodybuilding have small bones, small, narrow hips, and broad shoulders as a skeletal structure. I'm just wide all the way across with thick bones. So I'm more suited to be like a power lifter or something. The other thing is, I like food a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And the guys who do very well at bodybuilding, huge part of that is how they do things nutritionally along with their genetics. I
Right.
genetically carry more body fat. The guys who do very well at bodybuilding tend to be naturally muscular and naturally lean, and then they just amplify that through their training
Yeah.
and at the highest levels through whatever substances they use.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, okay. I wondered about that. So then you find strongman.
Yeah. So I'm doing kettlebell lifting and am becoming accomplished and fairly well known at that as an instructor. I also as a practitioner, and then I run across Dennis and start learning how to bend steel and rip decks of cards and that kind of stuff. So enjoyed learning to do that,
Yeah.
and spent several years kind of honing that craft, and then wound up hosting an old time strongman university at a gym that I used to run. I ran a gym for a while too. So during this phase, I'm teaching workshops, I'm training people online, I'm running a gym, and so I'm doing group classes and one-on-ones and hosting workshops and traveling doing workshops. So it's all sort of fitness related things and
Sure.
creating a few fitness info products, that kind of stuff. And in 2013, we did Old Time Strongman University at my gym in Nashville, and after that experience, being there with Dennis and helping him teach it, he decided that I would be a good vice president for Old Time Strongman University, which I'm very thankful for. And at that point in 2013, I'm like, you know what? This is what I really want to do. I want to be a performing strongman. But I also noticed that running parallel to that, there was a significant amount of stuff that I had been studying on my own from a personal development standpoint. In particular, things like As a Man Thinketh from James Allen, and the big one was this Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill. And so, like, I talk about this in my shows. Dennis had a mentor named Slim the Hammerman, who's still around. He's just turned 85. And Slim had a mentor named the Mighty Atom. And if you can find a copy of the biography of the Mighty Atom, it's called The Spiritual Journey of Joseph Greenstein. It is an amazing, amazing book. It's out of print now, but it is a fantastic book. And if you can find one for less than $75, snatch it up, because
Okay.
they're collector's items at this point.
Okay.
I have probably a dozen copies of it,
Nice.
and that I've just sort of set aside for, I'm going to give these as gifts or potentially sell them, later on after
Yeah. Once the price goes up a
once the
little more.
price goes up more, that kind of stuff. But I talk about in my shows, there's a quote from the Mighty Atom that never inhibit yourself by the seemingly impossible. If you think that you are strong, then you are. And I realized you could plug any word in for strong. If you think that you're weak, if you think that you're compassionate, if you think that you're not compassionate, if you think you're smart, if you think you're stupid, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you plug into there becomes reality, because you start to think of yourself in those terms and you create circumstances subconsciously, subconscious drives, right? Slim said, it's not that you don't have the power in you to do these feats. It's already there. You just have to figure out how to get to it. You can't get to it because of the fear. And so when you're faced with something like I was with driving a nail through a board, and the first time I ever saw that happen was a video of Dennis, and something went horribly wrong and the nail wound up stuck in his hand.
Oh, gosh.
That's a subconscious image while I'm trying to do this thing that requires full commitment and as much speed as I can. And I could feel myself slowing down. Trained with Dennis in person, and within 10 minutes, he had me convinced that I could do it. And so I do it in pretty much every show now. So can you access the power, or is the fear in the way? Okay. And then Dennis told me very early on, you have to remove all doubt and limitation from your mind, because your mind controls your body. And so I've got those quotes floating around in my mind. I'm reading Think and Grow Rich, and there's the classic Napoleon Hill quote of whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And I'm like, that's the same.
Yeah.
Because I figured out as a fitness pro that if I look at the differences in everything, then I'm going to perpetually be in conflict. If I find the similarities between different things that don't seem very apparent, typically that's the similarities hold the truth. So
Okay.
I would find that in terms of like technique for lifting weights, or there are certain principles that, like, let's say you're doing something entrepreneurial, right? There are
Mm-hmm.
certain principles that apply to everyone.
Yeah.
And if you abide by those, you'll be successful. And if you
Right.
go counter to those, then you are literally working against the nature of the universe.
Right.
So you're not going to make it, right? So that, much like Lou Ferrigno on television, made a neural spiritual connection for me. I'm like, okay. So I started really, really paying attention to how my mind works
Yeah.
in a very practical, very tactical way. I wasn't interested in like going back to school and getting a degree in psychology and learning what a bunch of other people thought about what some people thought about how the mind works. I wanted to know how to think to be superhuman, because if the mind controls the body, and whatever I can conceive and believe I can achieve, then in order to be superhuman, I have to learn to think superhuman thoughts. And so that led me to Bob Proctor. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. There was a movie called The Secret about 10 or 15 years
Sure.
ago. Bob Proctor was in that movie. I've never met him, but I've been through some of his coaching programs. And it was his coaching programs that shined a big light on the importance of how my subconscious mind directs my behavior, even if it is opposed to what my conscious mind wants. And so when we run across situations where we do something that we know is counter to what we want to accomplish, but we do it anyway, you're like, why did you do that? Like, I don't really know why I did that.
Yeah.
Well, I know the answer. It's because you were programmed to do that when you were a little kid before you had any say in the matter. And that programming sticks with us throughout our lives unless we consciously change it. And in order to consciously change it, we have to know how to operate the subconscious. And that's the crux of what I talk about in the book Superhuman You. That's the crux of what I talk about on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And any online coaching that I do for mindset stuff, mental approach, it all comes back to that. How do I reprogram my mind? There was another guy who was in that movie, The Secret, named Joe Vitale. And from Joe, I had read several of his books after seeing him in The Secret. From Joe, I learned the enormous power of forgiveness and gratitude. Like, if you can walk around in a state where you are perpetually being grateful for what you like and forgiving what you don't like, then that's a very, very powerful place to be. And it seemed really counterintuitive to the Hulk strength aspect, but operating from a place of forgiveness and gratitude and programming the subconscious mind in such a way that that is the waking natural state, that's the home state to be in, is what I gathered from all of that stuff. And that's what the core of the message that I speak about now is. And I use the feats of strength as a way to illustrate those points. And Joe Vitale, that I was talking about a moment ago, messaged me on Facebook out of the blue a few years ago. And I'm like, somebody's goofing on me, right? I'm getting trolled. But no, it was really him. And he messaged me to just out of the blue with a friend request on Facebook to tell me that he was a fan of what content I was putting out. And I'm like, well, that's amazing, because I've been reading your stuff for years.
Yeah.
And short version of the story is he wound up coming to Old Time Strongman University at age 63. And he woke up that morning as a 63-year-old guy who knew a lot about the mind. And he went to bed that night a strongman.
Wow.
He came in the nail drive feat that took me months to be able to do. He literally got it this very first attempt.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
That's got to feel really cool to have somebody like that as a mentor or somebody you look up to be able to
come and be a student.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the cool thing about that particular situation is, since I was familiar with his information, I was able to speak to him in language that was very targeted for him. And I'm like, Joe, I'm going to put this balloon on the bottom side of this board, and there's no board there. I just want you to use that nail to pop the balloon. I said, okay, I can do that. Pop. And he was done. And I'm like, do you realize how long it took me to be able to do that? In 30 years younger than you.
Right.
And
That's awesome.
And strong. I was strong.
Yeah.
So that just really drove home the point of the mind believing and conceiving and achieving.
Yeah.
You know? So
David, I have 3 questions I ask everybody.
I'll answer all 3 of them.
Okay. All right. First off, what are you afraid of?
Nothing.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of anything. No, I experience fear from time to time, but I realize that fear, generally speaking, is simply unfamiliar, a response to something that's unfamiliar or unknown.
Okay.
And so
Yes.
there's this apprehensiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really afraid of anything because I know that if I don't know something, I can learn whatever it is. So I'm not afraid of anything in the sense that something makes me want to go hide in a corner or whatever. I mean, obviously I experience emotions like that sometimes, but as far as just like there's this one thing that I'm afraid of, like some people are like, I'm afraid of spiders, or I'm
Sure.
afraid
Yep.
of heights or whatever. Nothing like that. No.
What do you regret?
I regret not getting started on the path that I'm on right now 10 years sooner.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can't really call it a true regret because there was stuff that happened before that I needed to have to be able to be effective in what I'm doing right now. So I don't, yeah,
You don't strike me as someone who spends a lot of time in regret.
no. No.
The last question is, who is God?
I am.
Okay.
That's God's name, right?
Yep.
And so that sounds like a very incredibly arrogant thing if you take it out of context. To quantify that, or qualify it rather, if we look at, again, the similarities across the board of spiritual traditions, what do they all have in common? That's what I'm interested in, because I believe that the truth lies in the commonality that exists throughout cultures. Any culture that we look at that has any sort of divinity involved in it will have certain similarities. One is there is more to this than what my senses can perceive.
Mm-hmm.
There is an element of the more I can help other people, the better everyone's experience is going to be. There is the human condition of I amness, our awareness. We were talking earlier about some of the work from a guy named Neville Goddard.
Yep.
Who is one of my favorites in terms of mystical and metaphysical and esoteric things like that. Neville equates our awareness of being with the God consciousness. So if in the beginning God said, then everything that God said is what we are. And if we look at it from a Judeo-Christian standpoint, when Moses was on the mountain and said, "Who shall I tell the people that you are?" God responded with, "Tell them I am sent you."
Yeah.
So I believe that is metaphoric language where the universal consciousness is revealing itself to a singular person in an experience, saying that that I am is that awareness. And it's reflected in the New Testament with Jesus saying, "Before Abraham was, I am."
Right.
And if you look at it biblically, and I haven't studied any other religious traditions through that lens, because I'm just I have my understanding that works for me, and so that's just not something I've been compelled to study. But I believe that every religious tradition has something that equates to that. And one thing that is absolutely prevalent in all of the major religious traditions is some variation of what we know as the Golden Rule, which initially, the way I was taught the Golden Rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I don't think that is a complete definition of that, because I can be polite and cordial to you and despise the fact that you're even alive.
Sure.
And I can imagine terrible things happening to you, and I can rejoice when you meet with misfortune.
Yeah.
But if I don't do anything directly to you, I'm still adhering to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The way I like to approach it, and this makes it, it's very simple, but it also makes it much more profound and a much more meaningful thing, I think, is think about others as you would like them to think about you.
Hmm.
And then that way, as soon as I catch myself thinking some crappy thought about someone else, I'm like, would I want anyone to think that about me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that in the midst of all that is where the true nature of God lies.
Okay.
And I think that when we look at what the true nature of God is, then we can see that it is our awareness. Because if I'm aware of kindness and compassion, then I will be much more likely to project that kindness and compassion.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, thank you.
Thank you.
So I feel confident in saying that Dave has the most unique career of anyone we've talked to so far. I am so glad that he came and shared his story with me, man. It was a blast. If you would like to see Dave doing some of his feats of strength, there are literally a gajillion places you can go. He's on Instagram, he's on TikTok, he is on Facebook. You can see all of those things by going to his website, irontamer.com. IronTamer.com. And as he said, if you'd like to get his book for free, just pay shipping, go to superhumanyobook.com. I think my favorite part of that was how Dave just can't help himself from talking about his mentors. He has so much respect for the people who came before him and showed him the way. It's a huge testament to how important a mentor can be in someone's life. Also, I should point out, Dave said he was the vice president of the Old Time Strongman University. Since this interview, he has actually become the president. So congratulations, Dave. If you'd like to see the portrait I made of him, you can go to our website, that being www.butenouughabout.me. You can go through all of the old episodes. You can see all of the portraits I've made of all of the people that have come by. You can connect to all of your favorite streaming apps, whether it's Spotify or iTunes or Google Play Music or Stitcher. They're all there. You can listen to episodes directly from the website, or you scroll down to the bottom. You can contact me directly through there. Let me know about somebody that you think I should be talking to. Or you can send feedback. I'd love to hear what you thought about this interview. On top of all of that, that's a great place for you to connect to the two other people that have helped make this show possible, those being Mr. Casey Jones. I'm going to give you a different website than I normally do. If you've heard me say this 100 times, it's going to change. Brace yourself. If you want to see more of Mr. Casey Jones's work, you can go to core29.com. That's actually a better place to see his work. Again, you can find that on our website, butenoughAbout.me, down toward the bottom. Casey Jones, just click on there, you'll find him, and it's got the correct website on there, core29.com. Or if you want to hear more about the gentleman scholar who made our music, Mr. Jace Hackman, he's on the website as well, or you can go directly to his site, jacehackman.com. I'm particularly excited because Mr. Hackman is about to become a father for the first time, and yeah, it's going to be fun. Jace, you have no idea what you're in for. It's fantastic. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to leave feedback, you can do that through the website, like I mentioned, or you could go over to iTunes, find the podcast on there, and leave feedback on there. That really does help in search results and help folks find the show when they're looking for it. I was very pleased to see that when I search for the show, it's your baby. You got to play with it on different things. So when I'm in people's cars, I mess with their phones and look for the podcast on their device to see how it works in search rankings and all that stuff. Anyway, you don't care about that. The bottom line is, I was very pleased to see that the show has gotten enough traction that now when you search for it, it's the top thing to come up, not a sports show that nobody cares about sports, right? I was pleased by that. And that's thanks to you guys leaving feedback, downloading, and telling other people about the show. Thank you so, so much. Please keep it up. It is so cool to see so many people like me that are interested in other people's stories and just want to hear how you became who you are. It occurs to me that I don't think I've ever given you guys updates. Of course, after I hear somebody's story, a lot of these folks are already people I know or friends, but it's really fun to continue following their lives and continue hearing about their stories. So I'm going to give you a couple of quick updates. Dr. Charles Marable, back from episode 14, has become a grandfather. Congratulations, Doc. Jamie Yost has changed jobs. Congrats, Jamie. Miranda Stebbins, if you'll remember from her story, she had moved to Tennessee and started dating her middle school sweetheart. They are engaged. Congratulations, Miranda and Tommy. I'm sure there are more things to tell you about, but that's all I got off the top of my head. I'm so excited for what is going on in this community. The feedback I have gotten from folks that have been on the show and see this as being a positive experience for them has been a little on the overwhelming side. Guys, people are desperate for somebody to listen to them. People are desperate to be heard and understood. So, you have an assignment. Sometime in the next 2 weeks, go find somebody, buy them a cup of coffee or a glass of whiskey, and ask them to tell you their story. My name is Tyler Andrews, but enough about me.